Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Life Show. Happy Thursday, everybody. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz. It's a great day to be great. It's a great day to break down what to do if you happen to find yourself with a late round draft position in your upcoming fantasy draft. So, joining me in this exhilarating adventure is none other than Fantasy Life Director of Analytics, Dwain "The Rock" McFarland. Good morning, Dwain.
What's up, Mr. Hartitz? More injury news, but not really injury news. Is that what we're doing now?
I've
Players
been
done for
carted
the
off to
season.
my kitchen.
Yeah, I had an air cast on yesterday because, I stumped my toe. So,
Look, I know everyone's doing their jobs, but yeah, maybe we should just be carting all these, finely tuned athletic machines to the locker room, even if it is a small lower body issue. I don't know, but yeah, we get on to that and so much more here. But first, guys, quick word on Fantasy Life Plus. Fantasy Life Plus is Fantasy Life's premium product. And yes, we are asking for a little bit of money, but not that much. And let's face it, guys, seeing that humiliation on your friends and family's faces after winning that fantasy championship is priceless anyway. So whether it's our consensus ranks, our draft champion tool, which we're going to get into a little bit later, or any of the number of Dwayne's utilization report goodness, I like to think with our content, podcast articles, all of which are remaining free. That's where we are giving you guys, the fish. Okay. You want the ranks and all this, like we're giving it to you in the articles. But if you want to really learn how to fish, get underneath the hood of things, how many metaphors can I squeeze into this? Stay tuned to find out. That's where, again, Fantasy Life Plus comes more into handy. So all we're asking for is less than a Chipotle burrito per month, and that's for the tier 2 package. Fantasy Life Plus, check it out. But now let's talk some news. Dwayne, you mentioned it, and while some injuries have got some good news, unfortunately, did get a bad update on Vikings rookie QB JJ McCarthy. As we mentioned yesterday, it was either going to be a trim meniscus or a torn meniscus, and sadly, it is the latter, and he is out for the season. So, JJ, get better, man. We are expecting a full recovery, but for now, Dwayne, it's Sam Darnold QB1 season.
yeah. So Darnold's really interesting because we all like Kevin O'Connell. We all like Justin Jefferson. We all, I think, acknowledge that Jordan Addison looked pretty good last year as a rookie explosive playmaker. So we've got weapons. Eventually, they'll get TJ Hawkinson back, probably more towards the middle of the season. Don't know, at what point we'll actually get, like 90% of TJ Hawkinson. So kind of not counting on him early in the season. But when we look at Darnold, like the question becomes, Ian, really want your thoughts here because I had a little bit of a debate back and forth with Hayden Winks from Underdog. Hayden's a really sharp guy. And he had set the over under at 245 for passing yards per game from Sam Darnold. I was more at 225. This is a guy that's passed for 211 yards per game over his career, which is a major, concern. Now, I acknowledge, and we've talked about this. Like he had Adam Gase, he had Jamison Crowder and Robbie Anderson, but he also had a year where he turned DJ Moore into absolute nothing. You could not use
Yeah.
DJ Moore the year that Sam Darnold was his starting quarterback. Like that's not a debatable fact. And while I understand that scheme really does matter, also typically good quarterbacks and good wide receivers they'll make things happen without their coordinator. Like they get on the same page, they know what they're doing, they make it happen. So there are some major negatives, in my opinion, with Sam Darnold, but he was an early pick. So, I mean, can he turn into a Jared Goff? Can he turn into a Tua Tagovailoa? Can he turn into, a Brock Purdy, a guy that could sit there and be the point guard and distribute? And to back things up, Hayden put some really nice film out, on Darnold from last week, in the preseason game and like some throws he makes. And I don't think anybody's ever doubted like that Darnold can make all the throws. Like he can spin it, like, and he can layer some things in there. But I do wonder, is there something, up here in the processing part that's just not right for Darnold? But can KOC fix that? That's my question to you.
Look, the guy went third overall for a reason. I was joking before, this even happened about that one throw he made several years ago against the 49ers late in a blowout, where it's like, yeah, you will see a play or two per game where you think that, hey, if he could just do this every drop back,
Yeah.
we'd be cooking here. But sadly, it is those mistakes. And honestly, Dwayne, that happened in the preseason game. That intermediate throw to Naylor, where you had to go over top the linebacker in front of the safeties, that and then Malik Willis had a dime. Those were the two best throws I saw all of last week. But on that same drive, he also, kind of forced into the end zone and nearly got picked off. So that is part of the Sam Darnold experience. And again, we can pick these smaller sample size, but I just feel like we're jumping through a lot of hoops to try to make Darnold out to be a good real life quarterback. But as we know, Dwayne, sometimes we do see, more rough real life quarterbacks still be useful in fantasy. Even someone like Sam Howell last year, who wasn't exactly the most prolific rusher, still got there. So in terms of adjusting the fantasy ranks, where does Darnold fall for you?
I'm putting him in the same tier as where we've got Geno Smith Both guys can run a little bit, but I would still qualify them as pocket passers. Like they're not, stone dead, in the rushing department. But when I look at the surrounding environment, I've got Darnold right now at 235 passing yards per game. So I had said 225. Hayden had said 245. So like anytime you have another smart person in the industry, like you really go back, look at your stuff. I had a good conversation with Matthew Friedman, found out where he was at on Darnold, and he was right around the 235 mark as well. So I've got him at 235 per game in our projections right now, which would be a pretty big increase from where he's been at 211. It's just tough for me to get further than that. But I will say, I was already expecting a low volume, a low passing yards per game number from this team. So it doesn't really change anything for me with Justin Jefferson. Doesn't change anything for me with Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, everyone else. I really stay the same on. I am expecting this team to try to run the ball more than what they did over the last few seasons with Kirk Cousins. One of the biggest drivers to drop back rate over expectation has been the quality of quarterback play, more so than coordinators in the research that I found. Now, they were all kind of close, but quarterback was the lead factor. If teams had a bad quarterback, they tried to not throw the ball. And coaches typically are smarty and like they know, like we don't want to turn the ball over. We don't just want to lose the game in the first quarter. And if you got bad quarterback play, like you open yourself up to do that. So I do think they'll try to be more balanced. Now, maybe Sam Darnold can earn that trust if he's really showing that he's slinging it, not making those mistakes. Maybe they open that offense up to look more like what it did under Kirk Cousins with Kevin O'Connell. So I'm kind of splitting the difference between those. So I do think that Connell's like in that QB 20 range for me, right around where Geno Smith goes. If you want to think of him, maybe just a little bit below Matthew Stafford, a little bit below Kirk Cousins, but right in that range for me.
That is where Dwayne and I both have him ranked right now. QB 23, also slightly behind Deshaun Watson, slightly behind Geno Smith, one spot ahead of Baker Mayfield, Will Levis, Bryce Young, amongst others. So, again, not someone you're necessarily building your fantasy team around, but potentially some nice late round value and certainly a streaming option early in the season. So, Dwayne, not the only news out of Minnesota, also had rising second year talent Jordan Addison, as we kind of alluded to in the intro. First get carted off the field, and then as we found out later from head coach Kevin O'Connell, it does not appear to be overly serious. Connell specifically said, I think he's going to be okay. So, phew, Dwayne, hurt, not injured, the Jordan Addison story.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Addison last year, while like it was tough for him to earn targets when Justin Jefferson was on the field, you can't deny the big plays that he made. I mean, the guy is a really good route runner. He gets over the top of DBs pretty consistently. Size, he's a little bit smaller, but man, like his separation skills are really strong. Like I could see this guy in a few years being someone, especially like if he ended up where he wasn't playing with Justin Jefferson. Like I don't know, like a Deontay Johnson with more speed. Like that's
Ooh.
like probably the closest comp I would have to Jordan Addison. So I think there's definitely some fantasy upside here. I'm glad to see that he didn't get hurt. I do think that his path to relevance this year is, can he like up his target share to like maybe 20% and not take a dive in the efficiency department, which is going to be tough because you just lost Kirk Cousins, who threw for 270 yards per
Right.
game over the last 3 seasons. I think we all acknowledge as well as Sam Darnold might play, it's going down from there. So Addison, typically a guy I've not been taking in fantasy drafts, but I will say over the last couple of weeks, he's fallen in drafts. So I have started to take him more because like now where he's going in drafts, I'm like, okay, like I could see him coming through enough to where I would feel like I'd want to at least put him in my, starting lineup on bye weeks. And if I'm wrong about the guy and somehow the talent just wins through and Sam Darnold is lights out, well, there is a path to like we could look up and see Jordan Addison's a wide receiver too. I think he's more likely a boom bust wide receiver 4 this season.
You mentioned the route running chops. I mean, some of the double moves he put on tape last year,
Yeah.
absolutely beautiful to watch out there. So, as we shouted him out before on the show, Dr. Deepak Chona does great work at SportMD Analysis for you Twitter followers out there. But yeah, his report on Addison is that report suggests low concern. Data favors a week 1 return at around 100%. Wide receivers carry mildly elevated re-injury risk the first 3 weeks back. So, Dwayne, again, I don't mind people drafting, again, closer tiebreakers around this spot. Guys like Jameson Williams, Christian Watson, Cortland Sutton. You just want to take the healthier wide receiver, that's fine. But are you making any immediate changes to Addison's ranking based on this injury?
No, no, and I just kind of held yesterday after the Tyrone Tracy stuff that
I
we went
know.
through with the Aircast. I was like, I'm not going to change this yet, and it was the middle of the day. Like if I thought you guys were, going to be drafting, in the next hour, might have moved him down a few spots. But
Yeah.
yeah, all the guys you just named, like I think I'm still taking Addison over JMO. I think Addison's at least proved it, but I would take Christian Watson, so I think you still got the right range there. I'm not moving him right now.
Certainly have guys like Roman Dunze, Brian Thomas, Lab McConkey, Xavier Worthy, all those first round rookies still going well ahead of Addison. So get better soon, Jordan, and whatever's going on in Minnesota, guys, please maybe send a couple extra prayers to those injury gods out there because not going too smooth right now. So those are the two big news hits of today. Now I'm going to quickly run through some of the other goodness before, again, we get into what to do from a late round draft position. So some more injury sadness. Matthew Stafford left practice early with hamstring tightness. Keep an eye on that situation. Also, Zach Charbonnet not practicing. Apparently, the Seahawks are, quote, trying to figure out what's going on. Not exactly what you want to hear out of a head coach on an injury update. Tyler Lockett also has a little something going on in his leg, but per Mike McDonald, he will be ready to roll. Rashid Shaheed back from the hamstring injury. And by the way, the need for Shaheed, pretty great team name. You can check out a full article of some of the best fantasy football team names right now on FantasyLife.com. Some true doozies in there, even some, not safe for work additions that I can't even say on air right now. But Mark Andrews was sadly in a car accident, but he's okay, not trying to bury that lead. Also pointed out that, great reminder from the importance of wearing seatbelts and remaining alert while driving a car. Good notes, Mark. Glad you are healthy. Jordan Schultz reported that Jahmyr Gibbs is expected to be ready for week 1 with that hamstring injury. Again, not ideal, but remember, everyone, it is August. We do have some time to get ready for week 1. The Athletics' James Boyd projects Jelani Woods not to make the Colts final roster. That has been consistent with his usage. Right now, guys like Mo Alley Cox, Drew Ogletree, Kylan Granson, and Will Mallory working ahead of him. Yeah, your boy Ian might have drafted a bit too many round 18 shares of Jelani. Come on, man, turn it on here for the end. Final notes, the Patriots traded stud edge rusher Matthew Judon to the Falcons for just a 2025 third. Always funny some of the relatively low returns we see out of star player trades, but I get it. He is getting a little bit older and certainly will likely need a new contract soon to avoid another Hassan Reddick situation. The Bills tried out Corey Davis. He is unretiring, just didn't want to be on the Jets anymore, I guess. Who can blame the man there? And per Johnny Venerable, Greg Dortch looks unreal in joint practice against Indy. So, yeah, he said that about Marvin Harrison Jr. too. But as you guys know, this is a pro Dortch podcast. So, yeah, anytime we can give the man some propaganda, we are going to do that. So, yeah, everyone, that was the news. And now a quick word on our friends over at DraftKings. Whether you've been watching your favorite team from the screen at home or the ballpark in the stands, there's an even better way to get in on the action. Check out our partners over at DraftKings Sportsbook. Now, everyone, I get it. Sports betting, not yet legal in all 50 states, but we still have plenty of DFS and particularly my favorite, best ball offerings. If you guys are not familiar with best ball, feel free to check out Dwain and myself do a best ball draft over at DraftKings this Friday morning. But yeah, really fun time. You draft once and guess what? Everything's optimized and you just get to watch that money roll into your account. So new customers who bet just $5 will instantly get $150 back in bonus bets. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use our code FantasyLife. Remember, the crown is yours. All right, Dwain, it has been, draft starting position week. We've done early, we've done middle, and here we are at late. So first of all, Dwain, how do you feel when you get a draft pick between 109 and 112? Because personally, I don't feel great.
It is pretty tough this year, especially at 12. But I feel okay. I mean, the thing that's made it tougher here recently is the injuries to all of the players that go in that range. Like we've got Puka Nakua. So you've got, we never want to, if we can avoid it, like we'd rather just take healthy players with our early picks. So we've got Puka Nakua battling an injury. We've got Jahmyr Gibbs battling an injury. So we've also got down towards that range. Like if you're talking running backs, we've got some aging guys like a Derrick Henry. We got Kyron Williams, a guy who was a one hit. We don't know if he's a one hit wonder or not. So definitely more risk, in my opinion, down at that end. But I do think the talent is still there for a lot of these players, Ian. So if you can run pure on your, injury luck, and then some of these other, and some of these other things as far as like the one hit wonders and, a potential cliff year for Derrick Henry, like they're still good players. Like there's just a few more questions around them. But I think you can still craft a really good fantasy draft strategy from down at this end.
So, Dwayne, as I was kind of looking through the ADP board last night, I'm with you. There are some good players, specifically the wide receivers, that we do have a chance to get early. AJB, Garrett Wilson, Puka Nakua, Marvin Harrison Jr. And I kept going to the next two rounds. Oh, I like these wide receivers too. And I like these wide receivers too. And
I
finally, I had
know.
my
Yep.
wide receivers and quarterback and tight end filled out. And then I didn't really like the running backs that were available. So, something we were talking about early on in the show. Not that you want to force it. Again, as we say with fantasy drafts, take a page out of Bruce Lee's playbook, be like water. You don't want to go into any draft with this predetermined strategy. But what are your thoughts, Dwayne, on, again, taking a running back in the tiebreaker with the wide receivers early, even if it's just one, because it does seem like the more you want to go true zero RB, in these home leagues, there are late round wide receivers you can maybe get access to that we're just simply not used to seeing in more of the higher stakes or best ball formats.
Yeah, I think in these home leagues it's really tough to go zero. I think hero is the better strategy. Just because A, the running backs go earlier, so you're going to get boxed out, and B, what does that mean? The wide receivers get pushed down the board, so you're still getting value later at wide receiver. And I just feel more comfortable making sure I at least have one running back, because I don't want to go into a situation where suddenly I'm feeling like I'm having to reach for a running back later in the draft. And especially when you're picking down here at this end, like that could happen to you really quickly. Like I'd much rather take a running back like Jameer Gibbs on my own terms in round 2 than be forced to take Joe Mixon in round 3 or forced to take
Mm.
Ramondre Stevenson in round 4. Like I don't want to be forced into those choices. So I'd rather take a talented guy that I want in round 2, have my anchor, and then move forward. And I can let, the draft, to your point, I can stay like water, right? I can just decide, okay, what's the best value here? What's the best thing for my team? What's everyone else doing? What are they leaving for me? All of those sort of things. But I think the main thing that you and I probably both noticed working through this, like the wide receivers, like I actually feel you can build a wide receiver superpower from down here later. I'm not saying not to take wide receivers early, but there's a lot of really good value on this end of the board as you get into the draft.
And you guys know your leagues. If you are in a sharper situation where you don't think Malik Neighbors is going to last outside the top 60 picks, maybe you do adjust and go a bit wide receiver heavy early. But yeah, as Dwayne and I are about to get into, certainly some wild value at that position. So, Dwayne, let's get into it. Round 1 and 2 strategy, because again, picking at the end, we are going to be around that turn. As you guys can see now on your screen, shout out to our YouTube listeners/watchers. We do have Fantasy Life's ADP board out there. So, Dwayne, again, ADP tells us Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley, Kyron Williams, Derrick Henry, Jameer Gibbs, the running backs usually available around this range. And again, AJB, Garrett Wilson, Puka Nakua, Marvin Harrison, the top 4 wide receivers. So, not saying that is, again, who you have to take if you want to go ahead and go a little further. It is a free country after all. But what is kind of your ideal 2v2, Dwayne? Because I'm with you. I want a running back here, but is there a wide receiver that specifically stands out? Maybe someone who you just made a very bold call about in a certain article on fantasylife.com.
Yeah, I mean, I want one of AJ Brown, Garrett Wilson, and Puka Nakua. Like, I want one of those 3 players down here as my wide receiver. And then at running back, I want one of Saquon Barkley and Jameer Gibbs or Kyron Williams. That's my opinion. Derrick Henry, you can honestly, you can put Derrick Henry in the mix. I have him and Kyron pretty close. If you're really a huge Pacheco fan, I think that's fine as well. I think the big question here, Ian, like, look at pick 10. If you get the opportunity to go AJ Brown, Puka Nakua, that's really hard to pass up. I'm not going to lie. If you could go
Yeah.
AJ Brown and Puka Nakua, that's really tough. So the thing I start thinking about, do I feel better about AJ Brown, Kyron Williams, and Nico Collins, or do I like AJ Brown, Puka Nakua, and Joe Mixon? Or do you think that's a coin flip? Like, I think those are the things you kind of have to think through for yourself.
I think it's the running. I mean, I prefer Gibbs or Kyron or Henry over Joe Mixon. I think honestly that is the bigger leap of faith for me. Now, I have been a little more down on Puka compared to the relative, normal
But not
fantasy
that
analyst
far.
and
You're like a
everything.
couple of picks. So you
Exactly.
still know
That's
he's
how it
really
goes.
good.
That's how it goes. He's my wide receiver, I think 11 instead of the wide receiver 8 that he's usually going off the board. But even that said, Dwayne, I do feel like an AJB, Jameer Gibbs, Cooper Cup start for me that is superior than trying to get the Joe Mixon or Josh Jacobs. I think the Texans offense is too good to call him that. But let's face it, Dwayne, I'd also, it'd be a lot cooler if Joe Mixon was practicing right now and not still on the sideline with that thigh injury.
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, we've got the injuries there, but to your point, I'm with you because Nico Collins, like if we take underdog for example, where people have already drafted
Mm,
millions and millions of dollars of teams, they've got real skin in the game, and let's forget that wide receivers go early. Let's just look at where the wide receivers go. Puka and Nico are closer together, right, than Derrick
yeah.
Henry and Joe Mixon with where they go. So I think you're right because coming back, you get Nico, or to your point, you get Cooper Cup. I think I would rather go ahead and get the running back right there. Now, for some reason, Jameer Gibbs and Derrick Henry and Kyron are all gone. And then it's between Pacheco and Nakua. I think it's a little bit closer. But again, I think Pacheco, you could also go with him there as well if you wanted to make sure that you had your one running back.
Which of these running backs between JT, Saquon, Kyron, Henry, and Gibbs, if everything goes their way, who do you believe has the highest best case ceiling?
Oh man, they all have great ceilings if everything
Pretty
goes their
nice.
way. Like but everything going their way, like there's degrees of it, right? Gibbs requires an injury. But if it went his way, he would be the best one out of all these. Like if David Montgomery went down, Jameer Gibbs is smoking all these dudes. Now, he has to have an injury. Jonathan Taylor just needs to stay healthy. He needs Anthony Richardson to not steal the rushing touchdown. Same thing for Saquon. He needs less tush push, or he needs to score more on those first carries he gets inside the 5 yard line. You look at Derrick Henry, basically just needs to stay healthy. The dude's going to average 5 yards per carry with Lamar Jackson. Like it's happening, people. So he just needs to stay healthy and not hit the age cliff. So Jameer Gibbs, while he has the highest ceiling, I really do think that Derrick Henry and Jonathan Taylor probably have the most pure route to hitting their upside. Saquon's got several things to overcome. Needs to avoid tush push. I don't think his targets are going to be the same because now you've got Devonta Smith, AJ Brown, and Dallas Goedert, who are all going to be primary looks. Jalen Hurts scrambling, that hurts a little bit in the target department as well. So less catches, more yards per carry for Saquon, but maybe not necessarily a huge boost in touchdowns. So I would say it's probably JT and Derrick Henry that have the purest route to you looking up and being like, oh my God, like I'm so glad I have these guys on my team.
So, everyone, as we move down from rounds 1 and 2 to 3 and 4, as you can see, this is where some of the quarterbacks are hopefully falling to us. Again, Mahomes on average over at Yahoo, pick 28, and then Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, CJ Stroud, usually going off around the turn. So, Dwayne, we talked about Joe Mixon. I kind of have similar feelings about Rashad White and James Cook. Not saying they're overly priced, but I just don't love the idea of drafting them here. And I think it lands back to the idea that Hero RB is pretty great because here at the 3-4 turn, really good chance that we have either some great wide receivers to pick from, or maybe just maybe a top 4 quarterback falls to us.
Yeah, I will say if you went with AJ Brown and Puka Nakua, and this is what I was talking about earlier, I don't want to be forced into these picks. I do
Mhm.
think you have to take your medicine and take one of those running backs. And if you like James Cook, you think he's got more upside, you can really decide like on who you want to take. But I think you probably need to take one of them, in my opinion. Now, you can make an argument that you can get James Conner in the next 2 rounds, and he's the same thing as Joe Mixon, but you're starting to really thread like a thin needle of, well, is James Conner going to get to you? Because if
Yeah.
he doesn't, then now suddenly you're looking at Raheem Mostert. We like Raheem Mostert, but I really don't want him as my running back one, Ian, knowing that Achan's probably going to expand his role a little bit. Mostert's an older player. So it's like, I think that you got to really consider taking one of the backs here. You could still press your luck, even if you went wide receiver early. But right here, man, I think the thing is like, and the other reason why you're taking a running back in round 2 or in round 1, Cooper Cup, who you mentioned, but the big ones for me, man, are Jalen Waddle. Oh my God. Like Jalen
Ooh,
Waddle is a wide receiver one on many offenses. He just happens to play with Tyreek Hill, but he still has he has a good quarterback. He has a great play caller. Jalen Waddle's been a high end wide receiver too. Every year of his career, last year averaged 15.6 fantasy points per game in the games where he played at least 60%, of the routes. So when I look at Waddle, this is another major misprice, in the market. Like this is a guy that goes in round 2 right now on underdog. So you get Waddle here, you get Nico Collins here. It's a real sweet spot, for the wide receivers. So if you went wide receiver, running back, you can easily come back here and go wide receiver, wide receiver. I'm probably passing on all the elite quarterbacks here. Just because as I look at the
so
board and I look at, you still got Kyler, you got Jaden Daniels left. So
yeah.
I'm probably passing on them.
I hear you. And if I could walk into a draft and just, beforehand, the fantasy genie says you can guarantee you one pick. Hey, if I can get just Jaden Daniels in round 9, no matter what, that does give you a lot of affordability. But, you did bring up a good point, Dwayne, about kind of threading a needle Are you just out on all these elite quarterbacks in round 3 and 4 and kind of putting all your eggs in the Kyler and Jaden baskets? Because again, as much as I do like those guys, I do wonder. I mean, if Mahomes is sitting there at the 3-4 turn, man, I'm gonna have a hard time saying no to that.
Yeah, I mean, if look, I'm not gonna tell anybody to not take Mahomes, in round 3, but I'm not. I'm passing on it, this season. And the point being is that we're not just trying to thread the needle, with Jaden. You're gonna get a shot at Kyler, in your next pick. There's a chance Kyler falls back to you in your next pick. And then we've still got Jordan Love possibility, who we like, who
Oh,
has a lot of upside. And then you have Jaden Daniels. And then if you miss that, you still have a chance for Brock Purdy, who just, we know is going to come out and throw all these touchdowns and throw for all these yards because he's just got loaded weapons. It's not sexy. So I just feel like there's a lot of opportunity. Tua is another great backup plan. Like if once Tua finally has the season where he throws 40 touchdowns, and then he may never do it again. But this happens with these
yeah.
passers. You know how it goes. You just run hot on your touchdown efficiency one year. Matt Ryan is a great example of when that
Mhm.
happened with Kyle Shanahan. Matt Ryan, pretty much, a high-end QB2 his whole career. That one year he goes nuts. He's like the QB2 or QB3 in all of fantasy land in Atlanta with Julio Jones when Kyle Shanahan got there. So, like, I think there's still plenty of backstops, whereas I get a little bit more uncomfortable at some of these other positions. While we like wide receivers later in the draft, I
Yep.
don't think there's the same quality of wide receiver as what you're getting right here. Now, I do think if you really want one of the elite quarterbacks, I still think you can build a really great draft plan
Mhm.
and take them here. And you can still come back and build a really good team. So I obviously don't want to say, no, you can't take the quarterback. That's just not my strategy this year.
I will say if we're just going round by round, which we're doing, but we had to say what is the best value? What positions do we like the most? I think in round 1 and 2, we agree it is wide receiver and running back. Rounds 3 and 4, I would say these quarterbacks and obviously wide receiver. Those are the positions that again we're feeling best about. The tight ends at this point, not quite for us. They're going to be more in play, Dwayne, as we get into rounds 5 and 6. That's when George Kittle, Kyle Pitts, Dalton Kincaid are on the table. And previously, again, as you mentioned, Kyler Murray also going off in this range. So in rounds 5 and 6, let's say in the first 4 rounds, we managed to get our hero running back and then 3 very good wide receivers. Seems like a pretty good time to go elite at the onesies, take one of these great quarterbacks and tight end if they're the right guys for your squad.
Yeah, I mean, my targets here are Kyler Murray, Dalton Kincaid. Joe Burrow is definitely in the mix. I mean, Joe Burrow last year in his healthy games averaged 22 fantasy points per game. He's another reason why
Ooh,
I'm just kind of like, I don't have to take the quarterback early. I mean,
that's fair.
Kyler, Burrow, Jaden Daniels, like I feel really good about those guys, plus the other guys we mentioned a minute ago. So here, I think it's one of those. I think the other option is you could get your running back too with a guy like James Conner. James Conner, with the way that Trey Benson looked now behind the backup offensive line last week, like I'm a little less concerned. We'll see how, the Cardinals look this weekend. Maybe we'll see the starting offensive line, and we might feel really different about Trey Benson because he was pretty good in college. But when I look at it, yes, if I can get Dalton Kincaid here, if I can get Kyler Murray here, if I can get Kyle Pitts, I'm definitely taking one of the quarterback and tight end. I could consider doing both.
Pretty good options here at 5-6. These are almost like the adjuster rounds, Dwayne. This is kind of a good chance where if you haven't touched the position yet, you can still get a fairly elite option added. So if you are on the board, let's say pick 61, and lo and behold, you can pick between George Kittle, Dalton Kincaid, and Kyle Pitts. Let's assume Brandon Ayuk stays in San Fran. Who do you like among those three?
So I have George Kittle still ranked ahead in the ranks. So I know that Kittle's a real pain, Ian, and we were talking about it before the show, like the number of games where he didn't even have 5 targets last year.
Yeah,
It's a lot of ups
11.
and downs. 11 to be specific. But we just know George Kittle's really good. Like we don't know for sure with Dalton Kincaid and Kyle Pitts. I will say this though, if you're swinging for the ceiling and not depending on an injury on a teammate, I think Kincaid and Pitts definitely have the higher ceiling. I mean, we're talking about Kirk Cousins arriving, in Atlanta, and that's going to be a major difference for Kyle Pitts. I mean, he was dealing with Taylor Heineke was his best quarterback over the last
Ooh,
3 years. Then he also had Desmond Ritter. He had Marcus Mariota. Kyle Pitts gets the underlying things we want. He earns the targets. He can earn them down the field, all that kind of stuff. So when I look at him and I look at Dalton Kincaid, and the fact that really we don't know who the Bills' number one wide receiver is. It could actually be Dalton Kincaid, the tight end. Like, they're all really good options, but I want to come away with one of those three if I don't have a tight end yet.
And we haven't even mentioned some of the wide receivers going here, Dwayne. Tank Dell, Malik Neighbors, George Pickens, T. Higgins. I mean, hell, even Devonta Smith picked 52. It seems like there's at least a small chance that he could fall to this range. So this goes back to our initial point where I almost want to take the wide receivers in every single round, but at some point we do need to get that early RB. So very, a lot of chances here to really help fill almost any position that you still need on your roster. And again, we're getting some mock drafts and help prove that point here just in a few minutes. So a lot of good options, really, regardless of position, Dwayne, in rounds 5 and 6. As we move to rounds 7 and 8, this is where we start seeing the idiots take kickers, and we get to laugh at them during our drafts. But us, Dwayne, us scholars over here, get to benefit from really some great zero RB targets. And lo and behold, still some quality wide receivers, Calvin Ridley, and maybe the best pick you can make at this point in time, Rashee Rice, considering that, looking more and more unlikely he's going to be suspended for the season.
Rashee Rice is your pick here. You're taking Rashee Rice with one of these two picks if he's still on the board. You could be getting a wide receiver one. If everyone knew that Rashee Rice was not going to be suspended, which is looking more and more like that, he would be going in round 3 of this draft. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you should be taking him here. Malik Neighbors and Rashee Rice are your two major get out of jail free cards at wide receiver. If some reason, like let's say you take 2 running backs early and then you come back, you're like, oh my God, I love this tight end. And then you take 1 wide receiver and you got to start 3. My next 2 picks are going to be Rashee Rice and Malik Neighbors. I don't even care about ADP anymore. Those are the guys that I'm taking. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity here as far as to kind of like what you said last, you have makeup spots here that you can make up ground on your competition. If you for some reason are in a situation you've got 3 wide receivers you've got to start based on your format and you don't have your wide receiver 3 yet, like Rashee Rice is an automatic pick with one of these 2 plays. And then you mentioned it, you've got your zero running back, or your hero running back candidates. You got your RB2 guys that you could take here between Zach Moss. I love Jaylen Warren personally. I think he's going to get probably almost half the work already in Pittsburgh. And if for some reason Najee Harris goes down or they just decide that, you know what, Jalen's better, we're going to make him the lead back. Like Jaylen Warren's an amazing player. So Warren's the guy that I'm taking a lot right there.
For my, in my good old notes over here, best round 4, I literally just have Rashee Rice, and then yes, it is the running back. So not saying you couldn't take David Njoku or maybe a falling Jake Ferguson, but honestly, I almost like the round 9 plus tight ends more with your Dallas Goddard and Brock Bowers at cost at this point. Again, hopefully we can get
Ian,
George
real
Kittle.
quick, if you don't have your quarterback, this is your Jaden Daniels spot too. You're not waiting.
Okay.
You're not trying to wait to see if Jaden Daniels comes back to you. That pick right, that 85, 86, 87 range, you're taking Jaden Daniels if you don't have your quarterback yet.
As you guys can see, Jaden Daniels, Yahoo ADP 98, and that is on the rise. So I'm with you, Dwayne. And again, it's good to not only remember where you're picking on the turn, because that's a long way, obviously, to get back to you. Hey, 12, 15, 12 picks past ADP when you're at the turn is a little bit different than when you're in the middle and you have a more reasonable chance of getting the guy. But Dwayne, I know one thing that you really always point out that I, think is pretty smart by you. So good job, man. When we're doing the streams is being aware of your opponent's rosters. No, not just to steal their quarterback and all of a sudden play defense. That's ridiculous. Focus on your team and all. But if you do see a situation where, guess what, 7 or 8 teams between you and your next pick already have quarterbacks, that's when you can make a more educated guess that maybe this guy's going to fall back to me.
Yeah, for sure. And again, knowing your league mates can be 2 things. One, are they willing to do what Ian mentioned a second ago and they see that you don't have your quarterback and they're going to be willing to take 2? 2 could be you're playing with a lot of newbies that don't know that they shouldn't take 2 quarterbacks this early. And they're just sitting there and Jaden Daniels is sitting at the top of their queue, on the platform that you're drafting from. If you should always be looking at the queue you're drafting from, because there's going to be someone that doesn't know what to do with their pick and they're going to take one of the top 2 or 3 players in the queue. So you always got to pay attention to the queue. You always got to be paying attention to what the drafters around you have and making those educated guesses. But ultimately, it does come down to you guys, and you know what kind of league you're playing in. That's the third factor.
So, Dwayne, through 8 rounds, again, at this point, as you said, we're hopefully getting Jane Daniels in round 8 if we don't have a quarterback. Maybe we still need a tight end. And guess what? Guys like Dallas Goddard, Brock Bowers, even Dalton Schultz and Pat Fryermuth, going further down, he gets a little bit ahead, I guess. But these are guys that are all going to be available in round 9. So, if you don't have a tight end yet, I think that's fine. Otherwise, okay, we got the starting lineup filled out. Now we're just going to be mixing in running backs and wide receivers for the most part. And this is, I guess, one of the clear points about why it is okay to take a bunch of not a bunch, but take a couple running backs early. Because Dwayne, I mean, I don't know what it is about these rookie wide receivers, if they slept with Mrs. ADP or what the problem is, but man, Xavier Worthy, Christian Watson, Keon Coleman, Jameson Williams, these guys should not be going as cheap as they are. So yes, I do like the handcuff running backs. Chase Brown, if he falls to you, is great, but more than anything, I think in the later rounds, double digit rounds, handcuff running backs and young wide receivers who are much cheaper on ESPN and Yahoo than they are elsewhere.
Yeah, even if you already have 4 really good wide receivers, especially in 3 wide receiver formats, you should be tacking on 1, if not 2 of these rookies as your wide receiver 5 and wide receiver 6. We know that they have a really good chance to hit. That's often the player that's going to be coming on down the stretch to help you win your fantasy championship. We know you guys play in, and a lot of you are going to be playing in leagues where you can make trades. So you're getting you're going to you're taking players that are actually better than the running backs going in this range. So you're more likely to like hit on one of these wide receivers, Ian, and be able to trade them away for a better running back than what you're taking in this range. Now, there's still running backs we like. Like if you've only got 2 running backs and it gets to you and you can get Rico Dowdle on your team, absolutely should. Trey Benson, Chase Brown, these are all guys that we should be attacking. But don't be afraid just because you already have 4 really good wide receivers to tack on one more of these rookie wide receivers.
Some of these, again, are running backs with an ADP outside the top 130 on ESPN. Lily the Wiener Dog is certainly excited, but Blake Corum, Trey Benson, Zach Charbonnet, Tyler Algier, Ty Chandler, Antonio Gibson, Rico Dowdle, Chuba Hubbard, and not even being drafted right now in the AFC East, Ray Davis and Braylon Allen. So, not saying they're all created equal, but those are the sort of handcuff running backs you should be looking for late because each of them is just one injury away from being highly sought after. And again, you already have them on the bench. Good luck to all of your league mates who now have to deal with you and that. So, everyone, again, that was our main strategy from the late rounds. But Dwayne, let's put it into practice. It is mock draft time.
Let's do it.
Draft Champion, baby. As we mentioned before with our Fantasy Life Plus premium package, Draft Champion, in my opinion, is again really holding the weight there. We give you a ton of customizable ability, whether you're trying to play on ESPN, Yahoo, Sleeper, Dynasty, Best Ball, Redraft. Again, so many different ways to customize this to your liking. So, Dwayne, this is again the late round podcast. Shout out JJ. But number 10 over here with the draft position. We'll go ahead and do Yahoo since we've been talking about it. Starting 3 wide receivers, half PPR scoring. And from there, we will go ahead and start the draft and see what happens. So, as we said before, rounds 1 and 2, we'd like to get a wide receiver and running back here. It looks fun to get the 2 wide receivers, don't get me wrong. But, Dwayne, we've been gifted Bijan Robinson here. I think we should go ahead and take that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. You don't even need to talk to me. Just click it.
Shouldn't have even asked. My bad. So as we move on again to the term, still have someone like Jonathan Taylor, which is an interesting thought, but Chris Olave, Drake London, Jahmyr Gibbs, Saquon Barkley. So thoughts here, Dwayne, because again, as much as I do like Olave and Drake London, I mean, getting Jonathan Taylor and Bijan, pretty strong start knowing some of the wide receivers that could be available later.
Click on the draft forecast capsule. If you go to Drake, there you go. Yeah. Scroll
This is
down.
cool.
Oh yeah, I love this. So when we're looking at the wide receivers, the chance like that one of these guys are making it back to us. All right. So probably not getting, Drake London here, but we're still gonna have a really good shot. Obviously at Neighbors, Tank Dell, T. Higgins, all the okay. Yeah. If this happens, I think I'm willing to do this. I think I'm willing. Wow, we're about to go running back. Let's do it. That's why we have the draft champion to test these theories out, Ian.
And for those listening to us right now that can't see, again, we have an entire grid here: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end, literally with the percentage chances of these players making it back to us. Because picking at the turn, it's going to be a while. Should have a chance at all the quarterbacks, but Jonathan Taylor, Jameer Gibbs, Saquon, as good as gone. And then again, from Chris Olave to DJ Moore, also a good chance they're going to be out of the picture. But man, getting to start off this strong at running back, something Dwain and I cannot pass up. So we're going running back, running back. And now, Dwain, that does afford us the opportunity to potentially get elite at the onesies, but also soak up some of this sweet, sweet wide receiver value. So putting ourselves, don't want to say in a big bind because our running back room better be ranked number one after this, but certainly need to be playing catch up just a little bit at some of these other positions. So, as much as Devin Achan and Isaiah Pacheco do admittedly look good, we do need to start looking at wide receivers or, maybe getting elite. So Amari Cooper, Malik Neighbors, Travis Kelsey, Tank Dell, Josh Allen. Anyone, tickling your pickle over here, Dwayne?
I don't know about tickling my pickle, but yeah, we've got to go with one of the wide receivers. I'm not sure that we have this set on Yahoo for the settings. I think we might have this set on a different league setting with how many wide receivers just went. Because normally, like, we would be getting Malik Neighbors in round 5 or 6. But I'm willing to go ahead and take Malik Neighbors right now. Like, that's how much I like Malik Neighbors.
We're in a sharper mock draft, built by technology right now, I guess. Not quite letting the wide receiver value fall, but we do now have Malik Neighbors on the squad. And Dwayne, as we now get into round 4, again, some very good options like Travis Kelsey and Josh Allen. But as we pointed out, round 5, 6 turn, really a strong point where we can, get a lead at the onesies. So if we do want to continue catching up just a bit at wide receiver, Tank Dell, Zay Flowers, Christian Kirk, Terry McLaurin, Keenan Allen, those look like the guys, Dwayne, where we can get now and help the position, but probably not going to be available later.
Yeah, we've got a chance, based on the data here, 69% chance, it looks like, or is that 60% that Rashee Rice comes back to us. So let's roll the dice and see if Rice comes back
Mhm.
and take one. I'm saying it's Tank Dell for me, but you could
Yeah.
talk me into Zay Flowers. I like a lot of these guys here, but I really love Tank Dell.
Tank Dell, Nico Collins, 7 full games together, and I believe they both had exactly 51 targets. So as much as I do favor Nico Collins, certainly not outside the realm of imagination that Tank Dell actually winds up being the wide receiver 1 over there in Houston. So back to us, Dwayne. We do have Rashee Rice available. I think
Okay.
that's the
Don't
easy
even need to
pick.
talk to me.
Fine,
And
man.
this is a 3 wide receiver league that we're playing in. So yeah, let's
Rashee
get
Rice,
Rice. And then
welcome to
now
the
let's see what our
squad.
onesies look like.
Now, as we enter round 6, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Kyler Murray, Trey McBride, Dalton Kincaid, and George Kittle over there. So, again, looking more at who do we have the best chance of getting later. Looks like, Dwayne, we have a bit better chance at some of the tight ends. Kyle Pitts, 45% chance coming back, George Kittle, 26%. So, I know you really do love Trey McBride. Personally, though, man, can't help but think that someone like Anthony Richardson does make sense here. But at the same time, Kyler Murray, Joe Burrow have a chance at coming back as well. So I'm fine
Yeah,
going with an elite onesie. What do you want?
I would take McBride here in a heartbeat
Okay.
because I think we're still getting a really good quarterback. And all those guys are less than a coin flip to come back to us. They're all below 50% chance. So, and if we miss on all of those that were in that tier, we didn't. That the problem isn't just Trey McBride versus those guys. Is a really good chance we don't get an elite tight end if we
Yeah.
don't take McBride there. And I'm glad we did because they are all gone. The guys that we talked about, you could still get Evan Ingram, but he's not in the tier we were talking about.
It's a great point because, again, at quarterback, we still have the Jaden Daniels of the world where we aren't feeling that bad about what just happened. Tight end was going to be a bit more rough. So we have a big time chance of getting a quarterback to fall back to us, Dwayne. I will say Team 11 does not have one just yet. Again, this is what I was talking about earlier. We're just being kind of smart with what your league mates are working with when you're letting someone fall. So these are computers and everything, but we built them to hopefully, be reflecting what we're going to see in real life. Just missed on Kyler Murray by one pick. That one hurts. But I do feel like, Dwayne, if we want to, we could probably go ahead and pick something else and get Jaden Daniels coming back to us in
I agree.
just a second.
Yeah, I think we take one of the running backs or wide receivers here. Um,
We already
it
got
is a 3
Rashee
wide
Rice.
receiver league.
Otherwise,
We've invested
yeah.
so much at running back. I think it's wide receiver. I think we need another wide receiver here. I would be fine with Xavier Worthy or Christian Watson. That's your call.
Does already having
You're the man
Rashee
at the
Rice
controls,
make
Ian. Who
you?
are we taking?
I can do whatever
I
I
like
want here, but
Watson.
yeah,
I like
like
Watson
Dwayne, is
because we
that
do
enough for
already
you
have
though?
Rasheed Rice. Huh?
Yeah. So now tiebreaker, we go with the non-Chiefs player. We don't want every single Chiefs wide receiver.
Yes, I agree.
Cool. Christian Watson, come on down to the squad. Please, computer, do not, rob us of Jaden Daniels here. So we are good. And Dwayne, now it's your favorite player to draft. Jaden Daniels, come on down.
Boom.
Feeling good, everybody. That is through, let's see, 8 rounds. Again, we got Jaden Daniels, Bijan Robinson, Jonathan Taylor, Malik Neighbors, Tank Dell, Rashee Rice, Trey McBride, and Christian Watson. So, Dwayne, kind of writing this in an article I've come out recently, but more times than not, man, I do think it makes sense to have your starting offensive positions. And by that, I mean quarterback, running backs, wide receivers, and your tight end. I'd like to have those filled out through the first 9 rounds. Because again, if you're forced to start someone after that point, I think that's too big of a weakness to me want to necessarily bring on.
I think you could get by with not having one of them. You don't want to be without both of them, I think, coming out of the first 9 rounds in a home league specifically, especially if it's if you only have to start 2 wide receivers. If you've got 3 wide receivers and a flex, I can see you coming out of the first 9 rounds without one of your quarterback or your tight end. But otherwise, yeah, you want to have one, and if you're playing in a 2 wide receiver league, it's more likely that you've got both of them by then.
I've taken complete control of the ship from Dwayne, Brian
We're
Thomas,
good.
Brian Robinson, Chase Brown, amongst others that we are adding to this squad at this point. So,
Need wide
can't throw
receivers though
another.
for sure, because we
Yeah,
took the 2 early running backs, so we should invest less in running back. I think we're done at running back actually. I would be fine with 4 on this team.
I threw one more quarterback in there because I panicked, but you guys don't need to do that more times than not. So
You panicked and you didn't even have a clock on you.
well, you know what, Dwayne? I didn't want, as much as I love our draft champion, they do yell at you if you aren't taking, multiple quarterbacks. So I was trying to play into the
Oh,
algorithm
you're
a
trying to
little
get an
bit,
A
but
plus. I see. You're trying to.
yes. But
Ian's
I
trying
will
to.
say, yeah,
No, go ahead.
I will say, like Jaden Daniels to me, I can take a second quarterback late. It's not like where it's Anthony Richardson,
Yeah, you
Patrick
can.
Mahomes. I use such early draft capital. Jaden, I can see myself again going with another one. So still didn't exactly help our QB position rank. So I'll take full blame for this one, Dwayne. But we drafted like heavy RB. We got the second best RBs in the league. Just kind of read through our starting lineup a few minutes ago. But again, really cool options where it shows you that look who we drafted most like. Dwayne McFarland kind of makes sense, but I gave the next best grade out of all of our experts, Dwayne. So not too shabby, but in hindsight, do you wish that we had maybe gone running back, wide receiver, based on how the rest of the team played out?
Yeah, I actually do wonder if we actually have this thing set on Yahoo. How all the wide receivers went so fast. I have a feeling you left it. It might have been on Underdog. I don't know, but yeah, it went a little differently than we thought it was going to go. Which, to your point, it can happen to you in your home league, so you have to be prepared. So here's the thing, though. Where you see Rashee Rice and where you see Malik Neighbors get ranked because of what ADP and different things are factoring into this actually made that draft look worse than it was. I feel pretty good about it. I mean, I love with the way we built the team, taking the 2 running backs early, we came back for major upside at wide receiver, which is what I think you should do.
Honestly, also could have just been the fact that we did have 3 starting wide receiver spots in that one, perhaps pushed them up a little bit more. Now we are riding with 2, picking out of the 12 spot here in our next draft. So we are picking back to back Dwayne, Jahmyr Gibbs, Garrett Wilson, Derrick Henry, Kyron Williams, Isaiah Pacheco, and Puka Nacua, the top picks on the board. Gibbs and Garrett sound pretty good to me.
Yep, agree.
I'm taking Garrett first to put, the round 2 price tag on Gibbs to, hopefully light a
Thank you.
fire under his ass as we go on. Super important to nail the intricacies in your
Motivate
draft
your
like
players.
that after all. So wide receiver RB start here with Garrett and Gibbs. Now again to rounds 3 and 4, where again, don't love taking some of the onesies as good as guys like Josh Allen and obviously, Trey McBride and company could be. Just think we're going to have better chances to, get some good value on them a bit later. So already got our running back, Dwayne. We've mentioned before, not loving the round 3, 4 price tag on guys like Joe Mixon and Alvin Kamara. So seeing Jalen Waddle sitting there, seeing DJ Moore and Michael Pittman, want to double tap wide receiver here?
I think we could, but we're going to get Neighbors. We're going to get all those guys coming back. We're going to have a chance to get all those other guys coming back. I think Waddle's a slam dunk here.
Yeah,
I do think because we're only starting 2 wide receivers,
it's
click back
true.
on the tight end and quarterback again. I think this is the kind of build where if you really liked, yeah, I think I would take I think taking Jalen Hurts could be a lot of fun here. If you just want to go Josh
Ooh.
Allen, we can. I've got Jalen Hurts number 1 in my ranks by a smidge, but Josh Allen is the reigning, QB1 like for the last 4 years or whatever.
I'll give you Jalen. It'll be good to see what an elite quarterback build looks like. And Dwayne, I was updating my ranks yesterday, staring at Josh and Hurts, considering making the change. So certainly not an egregious move at all. So through 4 rounds, Jalen Hurts, Jameer Gibbs, Garrett Wilson, and Jalen Waddle, to Dwayne's point, really does make a big difference if you're starting 2 or 3 wide receivers. So good shout by you there. We are now on the round 5 and 6 turn. Dalton Kincaid, Kyle Pitts, 2 guys that are still available, Dwayne. I feel like we could go elite there and then go ahead and still get one of these running backs or wide receivers.
So, yeah, I agree. I think no, we have to take a wide receiver or a running back. I was just thinking on the tight end. The tight ends all have a really good shot, a decent shot, but not for sure. Kincaid right now, 59% chance he comes back to us next round. Ian, Kyle Pitts,
That's the
68%.
next pick, though,
So
Dwayne.
yeah, I think we do go
We're at the
ahead and take
turn.
one of them. Yeah, I agree with you. Let's get one of them, and then the wide receivers and running backs. I think it's wide receiver here, to be honest,
Zay Flowers,
because we have
top
a
of the
flex
board. He
spot
will
open.
definitely not be back to us. George Pickens, also someone we've enjoyed drafting. So Flowers
See, my
versus
problem is I don't like the
Pickens.
running backs. Do you want one of these
Yeah.
running backs here?
Hell no.
I don't. I don't
By the
either.
way,
I
the
don't
running
either. So I
backs,
think it's
the
tight end
running
or
backs for
receiver.
everyone out there, Najee Harris, Zamir White, DeAndre Swift. We do have a 40% plus chance of getting Jalen Warren, Tony Pollard, or Zach Moss. So I don't see huge discrepancies, Dwayne, between those guys. If we pass on Najee right now and get Jalen in the next round, I'm arguably happier.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree. I think we. Yeah. All right. Let's do this.
Wide receiver, it is. We'll go ahead and take Zay Flowers. Come on down. Pretty close again in that same tier with guys like George Pickens and Terry McLaurin. Wide receiver ones, maybe an offense that runs the ball a little more than we want, doesn't have maybe the best passing quarterback at their disposal, but still very talented wide receivers in their own right. So through 6 rounds, again, we went elite at quarterback with Jalen Hurts, also got Kyle Pitts. And then we have 3 wide receivers at this point in Garrett Wilson, Jalen Waddle, and Zay Flowers, rocking just the hero RB start with Jameer Gibbs. But as we look at it, Dwayne, sadly did not get Jalen Warren. Still have guys like Devin Singletary, Brian Robinson, Tajay Spears available, though. Rasheed Rice, our favorite pick to draft right now, I do think needs to be taken off the board. So I'm going to go ahead and grab Rasheed
Agree.
Rice. And from there, we'll get a better idea of, again, who has the better chance of falling back to us. So after doing that, what it's telling us is that Singletary, Robinson, Javante, Tajay Spears aren't going to be there. I mean, we've got our quarterback and tight end already settled. We got 4 wide receivers. We can only start 3 of them, including the flex. Even though I don't love Devin Singletary or Brian Robinson, Dwayne, these are the sort of zero RB targets that, again, almost got to swallow your pride and take one of them, because we do need to be cognizant that, taking running backs as our RB2 in around 10 plus, not going to be pretty.
Yep, and we know these 2 guys are going to be involved in their offense, and that's what we just need from our running back too. Brian Robinson's going to get like half the work. He's going to have Jaden Daniels helping open up holes for him. Devin Singletary, probably I would say out of the gates, probably going to be getting 65% of the work for the
Yeah.
Giants. We don't love the offense, but he's going to be out there doing his thing. So I think we take one of those.
I have done some research on what positions can best overcome a bad offense, and it has been, running backs that have, historically been a bit better there. So went ahead and locked
Oh
that
man, look
down.
who's at the top there that's available.
Chase Brown,
It's a
just
running
go ahead and
back.
do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chase Brown,
Yeah.
sign me up over there. So Chase Brown now our third RB off the board, and again, really great value where you see him going. I mean, Jerome Ford, Blake Corum, Zach Charbonnet, next guys up. Chase Brown really was a tier break in terms of, yeah, okay, this guy could legit be someone that we're trusting as an RB2 sooner rather than later. So again, done at quarterback and tight end, got our ballers. So out of Jackson Smith and the Jigba, Cortland Sutton, Brian Thomas Jr., Curtis Samuel, who you liking here, Dwayne?
I think we need another running back because we already took Rasheed
Okay,
Rice. Like,
that's
scroll
true.
up real quick and click on the show people the tier view as well that you can get here that I think really helps you with your decision. You go to cheat sheet.
Ooh,
And then
very
scroll
cool.
down. For those of you listening, if you haven't checked this out yet, we've got all the players broken down into tiers. So I'm constantly toggling back and forth between this tier view and then just looking at the percentage available view to help me decide who to take with my picks. But I think we need one of the running backs through, in this tier. For me, I think it's Blake Corum. I think he has the
Mhm.
highest upside. We've just seen what can happen with the Rams. Kyron Williams, had a massive workload last season. And I'm not saying that predicts injury this year, but for being
Sure.
a smaller back, it is tough to have 350 touches. And that's kind of like if he was on the pace he was on last year, that's what he would have had. So I think getting Corum makes a lot of sense.
Brian Thomas Jr. fell back to us as I start kind of zipping through the round 10 plus picks. But yeah, and again, looking at the tiers and kind of being a tier based drafter shows you that now, Dwayne, I mean, Marshawn Lloyd, Chuba Hubbard, not saying they can't make it, but it was a situation where Blake Corum to me in a bit of a different tier in terms of the handcuff upside. So glad we got that because after Brian Thomas Jr., yeah, we are starting to run a little bit light on wide receivers. So I will go ahead and just, kind of take Chuba as we start wrapping this up. But I will say, Dwayne, I think we proved here that you can get an elite quarterback, and as long as you play your cards right at running back and wide receiver, still fall out the roster just fine.
Absolutely. And again, in the 2 wide receiver drafts, I think taking the elite quarterback early is a lot easier. When you know you've got to start 3 wide receivers and a flex, I think those are the drafts where you want to push it a little bit more and just really probably put your chips on Kyler, Joe Burrow, and Jaden Daniels.
Nice little B plus draft. Again, on the turn, starting off with running back and wide receiver. Jameer Gibbs and Garrett Wilson leading the squad. Then got Jalen Waddle, Zay Flowers to fill out the wide receiver and flex spots. Jalen Hurts and Kyle Pitts as our elite onesies. Again, going with the hero RB mindset. Your RB2 and company are going to be great. That said, Devin Singletary, Chase Brown, Blake Corum, Chuba Hubbard, and Ray Davis, the exact sort of targets that we should be chasing. So who did we draft most like? Oh, that's so funny. It is Dwain McFarland once again.
Why
Funny
I don't
how
get why
that
it's
works.
I don't get why it's me. Well, actually, I do know why it's me because part of the
It's
logic
you
for people that are
drafting. It should
wondering.
be you.
Well, part of the logic also though, in the back end, like is projections are part of this, and so I'm creating the projections, so it's also kind of dictates this stuff a little bit. So you're gonna see my face probably pop up more than Ian's.
Again, guys, that is our draft champion tool. We invite you guys to check it out for yourself with a Fantasy Life Plus subscription. Really, really great way to get a lot of reps in here before your drafts get going. So that's going to wrap up this edition of the Fantasy Life Show. Dwayne and I will be back tomorrow with our 10 commandments for your fantasy draft. Don't want to miss out on that one. So for Dwayne, for producer Matt, for producer Kelsey, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning into the Fantasy Life Show. And until next time, take care, everybody.